Hello guys, welcome to the presentation of effective meetings. In this particular presentation, I will take you through the guidelines for implementing the effective meetings. Alright, so let's just go through the outlines of this particular presentation first. And the very first thing which we'll be covering, as you can see on the screen, why meetings management is needed. So those aspects we'll be covering first. Then the meetings objectives we'll be covering. So what should be the meetings objectives? And then the third is the factors for the meetings agenda. Fourth is the guidelines while executing the meeting. Fifth is the key points about the meetings management. And the last will be going through the MOM template. That is the minutes of meeting templates. All right. So let's dive into the presentation now with the very first slide on the why meetings management skills are needed. So the very first point which is highlighted here is to make sure the agenda is planned to stick to the areas of discussion. So when you are going through the meeting, it is very much essential that you have the planned agenda, okay, to make sure that your meeting remains on track, okay, and it doesn't get distracted to completely off track, okay. So you need to make sure the agenda is planned to stick to the areas of discussion, okay. Fair enough. Then second point is that to reduce the wastage of time and frustrations arising among the participants due to the bad handling of the meeting. So that should be another objective for the meeting management. We don't want to waste the time of our team members, which is a very productive, and we don't want to arouse the frustrations, among the participants just because the meetings are not handled properly and it is going completely off track. Okay, without accomplishing anything. So that is certainly one of the main objective for the meeting management. Then the third thing is that to empower the participants with the required knowledge and instructions to accomplish the task or management objectives. So we want sometimes we want to empower the participants with the required knowledge, okay, so we want to give them the required understandings which we have acquired. The very first understanding most of the time top management acquires, and that they transmit it to the down the line in the organization. So and the instructions also follows in the same manner. So that's the one of the key reason why the meetings gets called up, because they want to empower the participants with the particular knowledge, and which will enable them to accomplish the tasks and the management objectives. Okay, so the next point is that well-defined start and end times should be sticked to, and it should get followed uh, perfectly for all the participants to plan their other activities. Okay, so you need to have the start time and end time also for the meeting. Or sometimes what happens that people normally just mention the start time and they don't mention the end time, which is not good. Okay, so if you want to plan any meeting, then you must communicate the start time and end time, and you must stick to it. Okay, then only the other participants will be able to plan their other activities in the organization. Okay, now the last point is that executive of the meeting can keep his or her focus on items of agenda and can control the deviations by dropping the irrelevant items or taking the individual oriented one-to-one items offline to save everyone's time. Sometimes what happens is that some participants in the meeting raises some of the doubts only, which is only relevant to the specific task which they are doing, and for the others it is of no interest, or it's like irrelevant to them. So such items you can take it offline so that the other people's times won't wasted and they don't get deviated, to the other completely irrelevant things. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide now. Meetings objectives. So let's see what could be the different objectives for having a meeting. The first is that, do you want a decision? So sometimes we call the meeting because we want to take a decision and we want to involve our people in that. Okay, so and we want them to feel, that decision has been taken collectively with everyone's consent. So at the time we call the meeting, and we share the ideas with them, and then we take the inputs from them as well, and then we arrive at a particular decisions by looking at the different options which are available, by discussing the different ideas which people are having, and then arriving at a decision, okay, which is beneficial to all of them. Okay, now the second thing is that, do you want to generate the ideas? So that could be another objective for a meeting, which is very much nowadays, at least in a IT field, it is a very much relevant because most of the time, like we get the requirements from the customers, and then they just ask, they want to develop some software. So then you want to start generating the ideas, like or if you are generating any product for that, also you want to generate the ideas. So you discuss out about that with your team members, and then you start collecting the ideas. So there's a like a more like a brainstorming kind of a meetings, and which is meant for collecting a different ideas, which some of them could be completely out of box solutions kind of a things, and which you may not have even thought of, but they may be a very good ideas. Okay, so then the third is, are you getting the status report? So sometimes what happens that especially in a scrum meetings, when you are following up, there is like a stand-up meeting happens every day for 10 minutes with the team, and there you try to collect the work status by just asking the relevant questions, that what they have finished, what they are planning to do next, and what are any showstoppers or something like that. So those are the status reports related kind of meetings. Then the fourth is, are you communicating something? Sometimes what happens that you are having the knowledge which you want to share it with your team members, and there are some instructions which you want to give it to them for the organization's policies, or maybe some decision which has been arrived at, and that you want to communicate with the different stakeholders. So for all those reasons, you may call the meeting, and that is for main objective is communicating something to them. And sometimes you also want to persuade people, your team members, for certain things. So those kind of things also happen. So you need to figure out, what is your target for the communications. Are those like inspiring way of communications you want to do? You want to inspire the people, or you want to persuade your team members or customers or something like that? Or you just want to create the awareness, the brand awareness, or the product awareness, or the service awareness? So all those different reasons could be there for the communications, and those things you need to take into considerations when you are or mainly main objective is communicating. Okay, now the last point here is, are you making a plan? So what happens is that when you are creating your project plans in a MS project, and you are scheduling the different activities, and you want to figure out like what are the dependencies involved for arriving at the the CPM, like critical path method to figure out, or maybe the PERT evaluation technique, whatever you are using for the project planning purpose. So for that you want to identify the different activities, and for that you are specific reasons for calling those activities is of that I mean for calling the meeting is that for figuring out the different activities, and then for also for identifying the expertise of your team members, so that you can delegate the tasks, and you can more effective manner you can get the things done. So and then also you want to sometimes figure out like the availability of your team members for making the plans, their holiday schedules and all those things. So you want to take into considerations while making a plan. So for that purpose you invoke a meeting, and then that becomes the core objective for the meeting. Okay, and you drive the meeting accordingly. Let's move on to the next slide now. The factors for meetings agenda. So to prepare an agenda, consider the following factors. So these are few of the factors. So the one of the main factor is the priorities, what absolutely must be covered. So that is the reason basically you want to identify the priorities of the task in hand, or whatever the task you are having in the pipeline. So on those priorities, you want to communicate it to your team members also. So for that reason, you call the meeting. Okay, and that is one of the main factor. The second is the results. What needs to get accomplished at end of the meeting? So what are the results you want to achieve? So that you want to identify, or you want to accomplish. So that's what you want to communicate it to your members. So that's why you call the meeting. So that is one of the main factor for the meeting agenda. That could be one of the main factor. Participants. Who needs to attend the meeting for it to be successful? So whenever you are invoking a meeting, you need to figure out like who all could be the participants, who all are the stakeholders, and who all are going to get involved in these activities, and who should be informed in this meeting. So accordingly, you will be setting your participants list, and then you will be calling them for the meeting. So you need to send a meeting invite to them. Then the sequence, in a what order you will cover the topic. So when you are preparing for a meeting, you need to figure out like how you want to drive your meeting. So what will be the first item you will be taking on the agenda? What will be the next, and what will be the third? So there needs to be a proper sequence needs to get followed. So the if some knowledge needs to get departed before taking the second item, then that should go as a first item, and then after sharing that particular knowledge, then only you can throw the another item on the agenda, because it has a dependency on the very first item. So you need to figure out the sequence of the items on the agenda of the meeting. The fifth thing is the timing. How much time will be spent on each topic? So you need to just roughly estimate, for figuring out the duration of the meeting. So that you can inform the start time and end time accordingly to your participants. Okay. The next item is date and time. So when you are going to have the meeting, so that is also another key questions. Okay, because sometimes you are still awaiting for the information, so that may be available at the later date or a time. So you need to schedule your meeting accordingly, and you need to set it accordingly. Also you need to see, what will be feasible to everyone to have the meeting, because they are also involved in the other high priority activities. So you need to figure it out accordingly. Place, where will the meeting take place? So sometimes it is going to be a face-to-face meeting, sometimes it's going to be a con call, or sometimes it's going to be a webex call kind of a things. So you may be having the conference call over the web. So it could be a video con call, or maybe some other just a phone con call, or whatever may be the mode. So that you need to identify. Now, this after considering these factors, let's move on to the next slide. Here, I will be talking about the guidelines while executing the meeting. So, the very first guideline is that if certain people are dominating the conversations, make a point of asking others also for their ideas, because it should not happen that only the one or two person who dominates the whole meeting. And the basic purpose of the meeting is to involve the people. So we need to involve as many of the team members, as many as we can. So we have to start asking the others also for their ideas and their inputs. Okay. Secondly, at the end of each agenda item, quickly summarize what was said and ask the people to confirm that that's a fair summary. Then make the notes regarding the follow-up. So you need to summarize. So sometimes we call it as a minutes of meeting. So that we need to maintain. And I'll be in the next few slides. I will also be sharing you the template of the MOM, which we call the minutes of meeting template. And in that, like you will come to know what all things we have. Like we have the different sections, like points discussed, and then the decisions taken, then action items planned, and the next meeting related planning, and etc. All those things are there. So we will be covering it in the next few slides. Not the items that require a further discussion. So that also you need to maintain. Okay, and then watch the body language and make the adjustments as necessary. Maybe you need a break, or you need to stop someone from speaking too much. If somebody is speaking too much, then you need to interrupt, and then you need to say like we are completely going out of track, so maybe we can take it offline, or maybe it is completely irrelevant. So let's focus back onto the things which we really want to focus on, and then you should get the things back on a track. And you should also watch the body language as it's written here, to figure out the attitude of the team members for certain ideas which you are throwing. Is it acceptable to them or not? That you can judge it from their body language. Okay. Now the another point is here is that ensure the meeting stays on the topic. So as I already said, if it is getting a distracted, then it's your responsibility to get it back on the track. List all the tasks that are generated at the meeting. Make a note of who is assigned to do what and by when. So you need to list down all the tasks which are generated at the meeting, which is a very important thing. You need to make a note that who is been assigned what. So that's what in the MOM you need to maintain that, and by which date you are planning to take all these actions. Okay. So that is a very crucial thing, because in a next meeting you would like to follow up on whatever the decisions were taken in the previous meeting, right? So at the close of the meeting, quickly summarize next steps and inform everyone that you will be sending out a meeting summary. Okay, so this is about the closing of the meeting. Now let's move on to the next slide. The here we'll be discussing about the key points. So running an effective meeting is a more than a sending out a notice that your team is to meet at a particular time and place. Now, effective meetings need a structure and order. Without these elements, they can go on forever and ever and not accomplish a thing. So you need to send a particular notice to your team that what exact date and time you will be meeting, what will be the agenda of the meeting. So you need to structure, you need to do a little bit homework before calling up the meeting. So that is the key point here. Now let's move on to the second point, is that with a solid objective in mind, a tight agenda and a commitment to involving the meeting participants in the planning, preparation and execution of the meeting, you are well on your way to chairing the great meetings. So when you have these things, you can be assured of running a successful meeting. So what are the things is that solid objectives in the mind, first thing, tight agenda, sticking to the agenda and the commitment in involving the meeting participants in the planning, preparation and execution of the meeting. So that is the key thing. Okay, so then you will have the great meeting. Now the last point here is that given the frustration most people feel when their time is wasted, gaining a reputation for running efficient and a successful meetings is a good for you and your career. So you should try to keep the meeting simple and short and sweet. That is the key point here, because people don't want to lose their valuable productive time. So you also need to value their time. Okay, let's move on to the next slide here, where I will be discussing about the MOM template. So here this is the template for the minutes of meeting. As you can see, the date of meeting will get recorded, prepared by whom, time started, meeting duration, what was said, venue and mode. Either it is a face-to-face, over the call, or maybe the video conference call. Okay, then attended by, so here from the customer side, who has attended, from on site who has attended, from the officer or maybe from the vendors if you are having with the vendor who has attended the meetings, or any third party. Okay, then absent is who are called for the meeting but who were not available, so those will get listed here. Then the objectives of the meetings will get listed here, that is nothing but your agenda basically for the meeting. And then in the next slide, like as you can see, points discussed we will be maintaining here. So who said what and all those things that will get maintained here. Then the decisions which you take collectively, those will get listed here. Then the action items you need to list here, that this is the actions which needs to be taken by so and so date, that will come here in a target date. And responsibility, the name of the person will come here, that who has been assigned this particular action item. And then a status, so if it is continuing from the previous meeting, then you will be updating the status for those particular action items. Okay, now in the next meeting you will be planning for the when to make the next, and then the date, time, venue and agenda will get listed here. All right, so with this, let's end up these presentations, and I would like to summarize what we have covered so far. So the very first thing which we covered is that why meeting management is needed. Then second thing which we covered is the meeting's objectives. Third is the factors for the meeting's agenda. And then the fourth is the guidelines while we are executing the meeting. So what needs to be taken care of. Then the key points, for the meeting management. And the lastly, we have seen the MOM template, which I strictly recommend for everyone to maintain whenever you are calling any meeting. So minutes of meeting must go to the people after the meeting gets over, preferably on the same day, or if not on the same day, then at least by next day you must send the minutes of meetings. So with that, let me finish my presentations, and I hope you really like this particular training on the effective meetings management, and I hope it will help you a lot in your career. Thank you very much. And if one more thing is that, like, if you really like this video, then I insist you to please go ahead and subscribe this channel, that is an online training channel, which under which this video has been posted. So if you will remain subscribed, then next time you will get all the intimations, and also the bookmark will get maintained for your benefit only. And also I will recommend all of you to please share this video with all your friends and colleagues, so that they also get benefited with this particular soft skills related training. Thank you very much.